Chuckleinik. I'm a reenactor, which means I wear funny clothes and I try to bring history to life. And for 36 years in the classroom, that's pretty much what I did. I dress the part, have the music play in the background for whatever time grade we're covering. I let the kids handle artifacts in the classroom. Teachers would say manipulatives or realia. It's fancy language for stuff kids can touch, making it a kid-friendly experience. And I'm no longer in the classroom, but I have an entire room at the house filled with garb. I still have a passion for bringing the past to life. I have a desire to preserve landmarks. I like to play history detective, an amateur archaeologist. So what I'm involved in now is a very pretentious sounding mission Odyssey. This is my personal journey, pilgrimage to visit each of the sites that were associated with the mission period in Alta California, and some of the sites that appear later. And I plan to do it in garb and tell the stories of each of these places. So what I'm doing today is I'm traveling from Mission San Luis Obispo, the fifth mission established, to an Asistencia that's little known, and it was the Asistencia Santa Margarita, which later became Rancho Margarita, and I guess it still is. It's a privately owned piece of California history, and so I'm going there to record it because you got to get permission to be there, and I wine really good, so I got permission, so I'm on my way, and I hope you will stick with me. So why am I fascinated by tracking down Asistencia Santa Margarita? So far in my mission odyssey, I've tracked down 6 other Asistencias. Of the 6, 2, San Antonio de Paula and Santa Isabel, continue to serve as functioning churches. Only San Antonio serves the original community on the reservation. What about the others? San Bernardino de Siena is a museum. The new structures share the same architectural style, but there's nothing original there. Santa Paula and Santa Gertrudis, they're plaques on the sides of roads, and Santa Gertrudis lies buried under the 33 freeway. San Marcos, there's a golf course covering the site. There isn't even a plaque. But Asistencia Santa Margarita, there's still remnants of original buildings. And I get to tell the story of the founding of the town, too. To get the reasoning behind the creation of the Asistencia, we first have to go back to the expedition of Governor Portola. The expedition departed San Diego late Saturday afternoon of July 14th, 1769, to begin the quest to establish an overland route to Monterey. Governor Portola, engineer and cartographer Miguel Costanzo, Padres Juan Crespe, the official diarist, and Francisco Gomez rode in the vanguard with the flag. They were followed by 63 leather-jacket soldados de cuera astride their horses, and more than 100 mules loaded with supplies, such as tools and sacks of flour, followed behind. Captain Fernando Rivera rode in the rear with the spare horses and mules, while Sergeant Jose Francisco Ortega led the pioneros. Father Crespi had first written about the Santa Margarita area in 1769 and described the difficult passage of traveling up from the San Luis Obispo area, that it took them like 5 hours to cover a couple of leagues. But this would be a site that would be remembered. The hardships of the makeshift campsite were memorable. In a gorge too small, too cramped for all the men and animals. There was no forage, and the horses were becoming weak with hunger. The weather had turned cold, and some of the soldiers had fallen ill. but several parties of natives visited the campsite. They had come to the lands to collect pine nuts for their winter stores and gave baskets to the hungry Spaniards. So, who were the people living in the area of Santa Margarita? These are the Chumash, but there's also reference to the Salinan living here. Both groups were hunters and gatherers, and they did trade with each other. 3 years later, the Padres remembered the sites that Portola and Crespi had spoken of, and Padre Serra had founded Mission San Luis Obispo, which was to be protected by the Presidio in Monterrey. Asistencia Santa Margarita was basically a spin-off of Mission San Luis Obispo. Now, this was the site that Father Crespi had reported, or when the Portola expedition came up this way, what a miserable go it was going up the Cuesta. But 3 years after Mission San Luis Obispo was established as the fifth mission, a rock-walled enclosure was built by the Chumash here as a place of worship for when the Padres would come to visit. And Santa Margarita was at first an estancia, and she had sister estancias at Rancho Arroyo Grande, Estancia San Miguelito, and Rancho de la Playa. But by 1787, Santa Margarita had formally become an Asistencia. Dedicated to the 13th century Margaret of Cortona, the patron saint of the falsely accused, the homeless, the insane, the orphan, the mentally ill, the midwives, penitents, single mothers, reformed prostitutes, and stepchildren, Asistencia Santa Margarita is sometimes referred to as San Luis Obispo County's third mission, and was at one point the northernmost outpost for Mission San Luis Obispo. It served as a chapel and a storehouse for the grains that were being raised, and there was also the raising of quite a few cattle, which would be likely to bear the brand of the mission. Nearby, some 6 miles from the mission, there were some hot springs, and there was located the Rancho Camado, and there are some remnants of walls there. Apparently there are ruins of a church, and a padre went regularly from the mission to say mass there. Looking at the stone ruins and the later paintings, you get an idea of what the main building was like. Yes, there were stone walls. This may have actually been the first stone structure in Alta California. Originally it had a tule roof. There was a chapel in the southwest end and 8 rooms for the use of the majordomo and his servants, and for visiting priests and travelers journeying up the Cuesta. There were also storage rooms. One was used as a granary for storing mission crops. After all, the Asistencia wasn't simply an outpost to minister to the souls of the Chumash. It was also a working ranch. Even Asistencia Santa Margarita could not escape the effects that the pirate Hippolyte Bouchard would cause. He just sent waves of terror all across Alta California. And when he had burned the Presidio at Monterrey to the ground, the governor had already warned, the Padres, hide your stuff, hide the valuables, go into the hills and hide. Well, for the people that were at Mission San Luis Obispo, all they had to do was come up the Cuesta, and there was already stone structures to shelter in, and there was also that Cuesta, that grade, that would discourage the pirates from showing up. However, Bouchard never showed here. Now, in February and March of 1824, the Chumash revolt took place, and it directly affected the missions of Santa Ynez, La Purísima, and Santa Barbara, and Mission San Luis Obispo ended up taking in refugees, but that's really the sole reference I ever found. I never found any reference to Asistencia Santa Margarita's involvement, but I would have to assume that at most they took in refugees, from this revolt. Mexico achieved independence from Spain, and those who were not loyal to the new government were often arrested. In the mid-1830s, Mexico finally enforced its secularization laws. This is the idea of eventually handing over the lands to the native Californians, and they would develop their own ranchos, and they would run the stores and the shops that were associated with the missions, and they would have their own leadership, which they themselves selected, and that of course never happened. Because what ended up happening is various governors conducted sales, and they made money off of this. And when secularization hit, okay, Mission San Luis Obispo is gone. All right, it's now secularized. It's not dealing with the church. And Asistencia Santa Margarita also is secularized. But by that point, the buildings had pretty much fallen apart. There was just disrepair and a disregard for what was there. And so in September of 1841, Joaquín Estrada bought the Asistencia, and even though it was secularized and the buildings were in disrepair, hey, he built new stuff, and this was apparently a real popular place to stop off, whichever direction you were going up the Cuesta in, because he threw lavish parties that were renowned throughout California. So this is kind of what's going to befall the Asistencia for a while. And then the Mexican War will end up happening. Well, this is what happens when you are trying to document something and you keep finding a lot of information. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to make a return to the Asistencia Santa Margarita. I hope you're going to stick with me.